Hello everybody, this is Ken with the Model Building and Retirement channel. Thank you for tuning in, appreciate it. I got a special episode for you today. This is a complete departure from what we've been doing. I am not going to do a showroom shine, we're not going to do a restoration car, we're not going to do a factory showroom new car. We're going to do patina, and I'm going to show you how to do it right after the intro. Okay, we're back. So I was thinking about it and I wanted to do something just totally different for a change. I have done a few patina jobs before, but I wanted to take you on the adventure with me this time, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. My inspiration for this one is that I wanted a shop truck for our diorama garage. So I chose the MPC 1978 Dodge D100 with the bonus little mini bike, which is really cool little add-on there. And it's not a very detailed kit, which makes it a perfect candidate for a patina job, because it's going to give it some pizzazz that you just couldn't get by just a showroom shine. A patina job is a little bit more challenging than you might think. The cool part is you really can't go wrong. You experiment a whole lot, you kind of go with the flow, and you end up with a lot of happy mistakes. And the only challenge in it is just to make it look realistic. So I'm going to take you on the adventure, and we're not going to build the model on the video. We're just going to show you how I do my rust effects and patina. So what I'm thinking about on this truck is it's going to be a shop truck that exists still today. So it's over 50 years old, and it's been maintained, at least mechanically, through all its years, but it has rusted out a little bit. Spent a couple of years in a rust belt before probably moving down south someplace, like maybe Texas, where it was just exposed to the sun, beating down on the paint and patinaed the paint a little bit. So let's get right into it, and I'll start showing you how to do it. So I'm going to start out with this MPC 1978 Dodge D100 pickup truck. Cool little bonus is it includes a little Rupp mini bike, which me and my brother shared one of those when I was a kid, so that's kind of a fun little thing. I'll be building that to add to my diorama. Alright, so to do my rust, there's a couple tools that I use. One of them is a Dremel. This is a Amazon off-brand called Hardell. I think it was around 30 bucks. Comes with some nice little accessories, and it charges with the USB port. So it's nice, handy. I also have the regular Dremel electric version. And I'll have a link for this in my description, along with everything else that I use too. So all my videos, I have links to my favorite products and tools. And you're going to want various tips and tools here. So this is sort of like a stone bit, and it comes with a couple knurled bits, a little rounded one sort of a barrel shaped. You know, you just play around with the tips you have and see what you got there. And I already rusted out one side, so I'll show you that. And then I'll show you how I do it. So being that I grew up in the Northeast, I do know how cars rust. If you need to, you can always get reference pictures off the internet. Look up rusty cars or cars from the Rust Belt. So I didn't want it to be too bad, like I said in the last section of the video there. You know, like it spent maybe 2 years, 1978 to 1980 in Ohio. The guy got a job transfer, moved to Texas or something. So it didn't get rusted out real bad, but it started eating. It didn't take long back in those days. A car like this, 3 to 5 years was totally rusted out if you drove it daily in the winter. So all the typical spots, your quarter panel, above your wheel well, lower part of the bed, back corner of the cab here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do that. And what I do is I'll use my Dremel, and I'm going to thin out the material from the backside using various bits, whatever bit is digging the best and fitting the best. And the very first time you start doing it, you're going to want to go very slow and methodical, and it might take you quite a while to keep going down deeper and deeper and deeper. You want to be almost paper thin. Okay. What you do is you get it thin enough, and then what you do is you'll take like an X-Acto blade here, and you're just going to literally poke through that different directions. Poke through this way, poke through that way, give it a little twist. You know, you can hog out bigger holes or smaller holes. You can take it to whatever level you want. And all right, so I'm going to show you how I do that. I apologize if I get out of frame once in a while. I'm trying to hold it up for you guys, but at the same time, I do have to see. Yeah, I could see you weren't in frame. All right, let's try this again. So the whole trick here is get that inside thin enough that you could easily poke through and jab from the outside. You don't want to go all the way through this way if you can. Try to avoid that. But if you... Okay, you can start seeing that it's... I don't know if you can see my light shining through. See how it's getting thin there? So we're actually probably okay to try jabbing it with the blade now. So I'm just using a regular number 11 X-Acto blade here. And all I'm going to do is poke it. And because it's so thin now, it kind of poked right in there. So what I do is I just puncture it a little bit, then I change the direction and puncture it again, puncture another little hole close by, try to go random. Sometimes I dig and turn and spin it a little bit. I'm just trying to be careful not to make perfectly rounded holes. You know, you want it to look random. Just trying to make my rust big enough because there's going to be a lot of treatments going on here. Not only am I going to have my paint techniques going on, but I will be using rust techniques with paint on the outside here too, on all these holes, various washes and textures. I don't want the holes to be all covered up with the stuff that I'm using to dress those. You know, they're meant to highlight the rust hole. So I do want these just big enough that they're visible. Okay, I'm going to thin that out just a little bit more. But I want my rust to look like if I bought that truck, it's like, hey, I could restore that to showroom with just some patchwork instead of replacing my quarters 100%. You know, it's kind of the way I'm looking. All right, so I'm a little bit thinner here. Do a couple more jabs. I got a little more thin right behind the wheel there, because what it's doing is it, you know, when you're driving in the salt and the snow, you're flinging up that salt water, and it just eats that metal. Doesn't take long. Luckily, today's cars hold up a little bit better. Like my truck is 9 years old. I do not see any rust yet, and I drive it daily. My Challenger is 8 years old. I don't see any signs on it either. So they do a much better job of treating that metal now. Plus, there's a lot of plastic, you know. Okay, trying to be consistent on both sides, so. Usually the driver's side gets it a little bit worse because, you know, when you're driving down the road, the other cars coming at you from the opposing direction are shooting salt up at you too. But all right, I'm going to continue on. We'll probably go to fast motion here for a while. Okay, well that kind of demonstrates how you do that. Now I'm going to go through and prep my rest of my body like I normally would, which is rescribing panel lines, getting rid of mold lines. I'm going to sand over this rust a little bit, get everything ready for primer. Actually, first we're going to go for some dents. We're going to get some dents and patina in that bed and the top rails here. And probably not too much other, because I don't want to look like the thing was beat to death. It survived 50 plus years. So it obviously was taken care of to some degree. So all right, so next let's get into a little bit of denting. Okay, so next I want to patina up this bed. You know, this guy threw stuff in there, whether he was wrenching, whether he was picking up engine blocks, go to the dump, whatever. And there's various ways to do this. I'm going to start out, this is just one of those little paint can openers, and I'm just using a candle to heat that up a little bit. And you could use like a little tiny Burns-O-Matic torch to speed up that process. But I get a little bit warm, and then I kind of just press it into the body a little bit to where it begins to melt. After. Okay. Now what's cool about this little tool is it's kind of got a hard edge here. It's got a curve on the back. So, you know, this one tool can give you various effects here. So let's try a nice big dent right on top of the rail of the bed here. And after I do so much of this, I'm going to get my little soldering iron out. You know, essentially what you're doing is melting the plastic here, and we'll have to dress that up a little bit so it don't look like melted plastic. Okay, so now I'll use a couple dings. Just random. Just nicks and dings, just like you would get, you know, because you can't dent plastic. So you have to simulate it. If you really tried to dent this, you're gonna crack it and break it instead. Okay, so I'm gonna go to fast forward and work on this some more and let you just watch along as I do that, and then we'll go to some other methods. Okay, so next up I'm going to sand, file, smooth over my dents. I think this is 400 grit here. Alright, I'm going to get some heavier grit for this one. I'll be right back. Okay, so I went out and got some 150 grit sandpaper, so it's got a little more bite to it. I'll cut that into a little bit smaller piece here. So we just want to smooth that out so it doesn't bulge like it was melted, but looks more like it was dented. Just trying to make those things look a little more realistic and not make it look like, oh, he just burned that. You know, that's the way he did it. He burned it. I want it to be like, how did he do that? You know, that's when you know you did it successfully. Pretty much, I guess everybody's going to figure it out, though, because we are dealing with plastic model kits. Okay, so I have all my rust completed and distressed the bed. So you get a good look at it. Plus, I did all my normal prep work like you would on a brand new model kit, like as if I was going to give it a nice paint job. Well, fact is, the matter is I am going to give it a nice paint job. It's what I do after that. You know, as I distress the paint. It'll be different, but I'm going to give it my signature nice paint job for sure. So it's all been panel line scribed, sanded down, all the mold marks gone, all the flashing cleaned up. So it's ready to go to primer. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that, you know, mainly I do extremely nice finishes with the MCW paint line. Enamels and their high gloss 2K clear. So this is a big departure. Everything I do on this kit today, or this episode, is totally different. In fact, I'm going to use Rust-Oleum flat red primer. It's like a red oxide primer, and it sticks to wood, metal, plastic. Now, I would never use this for my beautiful paint jobs because it lays on a little bit thick and modelly, but that's what I want on this. I want a really nice red oxide base. Then there's going to be some other treatments I do to the top of that before I clear or paint the car. But this is what I want to show under the distressed, weathered conditions. And it's going to be painted like an off-white color, the paint of the car. So don't tell anybody that I'm using this, because I'll get chastised. But it works really good for this. Now, you can use other primers for sure. The bottom line is you just need a nice good coat of a red oxide color to start with. So I'm just going to use this. Okay, so I'm all stirred up here. Going to give everything light coats. It look like it's going on heavy, but that's kind of a light coat. Okay, that's coat number one. So used to airbrushing, so it's a little bit different. Not too important to get the bottom right now, but wheels. It's the way I used to spray my models when I was a teenager. I never even primed. Used to buy the testers, spray cans, and just spray the model.
Second coat on the body. I guess that's a medium wet coat. Real nice. All my little distressed denting. It's looking pretty good in there. All right, I'm gonna let all that set up and I'm gonna let it dry overnight.
Well, I hope you're enjoying the build so far. I am. It's just a lot of fun. I just want to stop for just a moment and thank everybody who has been a subscriber. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe, like, and ring that little bell icon. It costs you absolutely nothing. It just alerts you to my content as it comes out. And I appreciate the growth that everybody's been helping me with. And, you know, it gives me the inspiration to keep videos coming your way. So let's get back to the build.
Okay, so it came out of primer and it's been overnight, so this is cured really well. And it covered really nice. In fact, I don't see any need to be sanding. I don't have any lumps, bumps, or dust or anything in it. Get a good look at all the dents that I put in the bed. I think that looks pretty realistic. And then a couple dents on top of the rails of the bed here, or the side rails of the back of the bed. Okay. So a couple things that you need to, well, a lot of things you need to start considering now is the patina stuff. So before we start talking about the colors of rust, you have to consider everything that's going to be shown on the model. And do you want it weathered or not? For example, the mirrors. Okay. Speaking of which, these are pretty fragile, and I saw there was no real good way to glue those. So I did pin the bottom and drilled the truck cab. I'm not going to pin the top because I'll have a good mount here, so it will be fairly easy to see where that lands and just add a dot of super glue. But, you know, you have to consider that. Now, is it possible that you added brand new mirrors to an older car? Yeah. Or are they original and need patinaed? So that's the kind of stuff you have to consider. Then you look at the chrome tree here. Bumpers, you know, pretty much they're going to need weathered down too. The grill, which I've already started a little bit of work there. I did some panel liner in the grill inserts, and this doesn't come with any clear headlights or anything, so I'm starting a little treatment on the headlights. So first that is a little bit of diluted acrylic white, and I'll be going a couple more treatments to try to make that look a little bit more like a lens. Now this entire part would be basically stainless, so you know, you're not going to rust that, but I'm going to give it a dull coat just to take down the shine, because I doubt if you got a brand new grill on there, and even the original wasn't chrome. Okay, the bumpers, I'm going to lightly rust those, so when I do my rust technique, we're going to lightly do that, and then we're going to spray dull coat on those. And these had raised letters saying Dodge on them. Well, you know, I kind of ground that down with my Dremel tool because I want to put just regular license plates on it. You know, it's not a show truck or anything like that. All right, wheels and tires. Now, you know, you got your nice set of wheels that come with the chrome kit here. And that's very possible that, you know, you picked up the truck and you got plans to do something really cool with it. Or even if not, go out and buy a brand new set of wheels. So it's very possible that you could have brand new shiny wheels on a patina truck. I'm not going to use these wheels at all. I'm going to go with the steely version, and I'm going to weather those. But I may or may not use these little center caps here, which are on the chrome tree. So I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll have like one or two on there, and the others have just been lost over the years. But I'm going to do a little bit of rust technique and dull coat on that as well. And tires. Now, you know, this is probably a well-maintained, mechanically sound truck, so I'm gonna guess that these tires are gonna not look too bad. Maybe just dirtied up a little bit so they don't look brand new, but it is possible that a guy just got back from the tire shop with his patinaed wheels and had brand new tires mounted on them. I've done that before. Okay, and then even the glass, which I don't have pulled out at the moment, but I doubt if he's going to have his glass totally clean as a work truck that probably sits outside in the field every day, or out in the driveway at least. So we're going to dust that up a little bit with some dull coat, and he probably just lets the windshield wipers do the job. So, you know, we'll kind of mask that off so it's clean where the wipers would run. All right, so next up, I'm going to gather up everything that we need to start the colors of rust. Okay, so now we're going to work on simulating the rust effects that are going to show up through the paint when the paint fades on the vehicle. Now, we did start with the red oxide, which is just a good rusty base color. But look at the images that I'm going to put up at the top of the screen. Some various rusted spots, you know, rusted patina, rusted quarter panels or whatnot. It's not just one color, it's like multi-layered colors of rust. So we're going to use water-based craft paints to do this, and I have a variety of things I'm going to use. Here's a chestnut, here is a dark red, this is a dark red brick, a medium brown, a red oxide, not the same as my primer, but a red oxide, and black if we need it to tone or change colors. Now I'm either going to use all of these or some of these, or some of them I'm going to blend together to get different layers of rust. Okay, so the way I apply that is I take this sponge, and this is just like a cleaning sponge for the kitchen or car or whatever. And no, I don't have a mouse problem down in my basement here. What I do is when I'm going to do the patina, I will take a piece of that foam and just rip it off. And now I got that nice rough little texture that I'm going to be working with. So this is going to be my paintbrush. You're going to need a piece of paper because you're going to wet your paint into here and you're going to blot. Gonna need a few little containers to put your paint into, so I'm using water bottle caps. I saved those, so I have quite a few collection of that. And let's get to it. Okay, so I'm not even going to use those little bottle caps. I'm going to just pour my paint out on my paper here where I'm going to be doing my blotting. So I'm starting with a little bit of red oxide. And I just start with a little bit. I can always pour out more if I needed to. And what I'm basically doing is some of the darker colors first, and then I'll go to lighter colors on top, multi-layered. But I'm going to make sure I have the rough spot of my sponge here. Just kind of dip that in there a little bit. All right, now I'm just dry blotting that. I don't want it to be too strong. All right, now you got a picture where this is going to be. Imagine now the truck is painted and fading, so the sun's beating down on it. So it's not going to be the entire truck rusted out. It's going to be just the parts where the sun really does its job. So most likely the front of the cab, around the edges, maybe a couple spots in the middle. Definitely like the tops of the fenders. And it's, once again, it's kind of random. Tops of the doors. A little bit down the side, because the sun isn't always at 12 o'clock high. You can go as much as you want or a little. Like if this was a
junkyard or a field find, you're probably going to have a lot more patina on your vehicle because it's just been exposed to the elements and never maintained, never washed in the last 50 years or whatever. Well, this truck isn't quite that. It's used, so he might not wash it regularly, but he's probably washed it off occasionally. Okay, so just a little bit of that on there, just randomly done. Get a little bit more here. And now we'll work on the top of the bed rails. Same thing, just kind of randomly patting. I'm not swiping, I'm just blotting. And I'm going as dry as I can. I can always go a little wetter if I want to. It's just easier to go light and add more than it is to go too much and have to remove it, because removing it really basically means that you're going to have to wash it all away or sand it all away or whatever. Every edge of the paint has the least amount of mils build up. Flat parts of the paint and down the sides get a lot more paint thickness, but these edges, even from the factory or restoration or anything, they don't get it. It's thinner. So if the sun is going to start deteriorating paint, it's going to attack its most at those areas first. Get some patina in the bed as well. All right, so that is my first color, red oxide. Next, I'm gonna go with a mixture of my red brick and dark red. And I'm just gonna stir that up a little bit. So I guess it's sort of like a red brown. Okay, once again, I'll even use the same sponge because the older paint's already just starting to dry and set up on there. But you can replace this as you need it. All right, so once again, we're just gonna go over the areas that we already did. This isn't looking much different than the very first paint, but it's slightly different shade. These effects will all add up in the end. Forgot to get the cowl area here a little bit too. We can go further down the sides too, you know, because maybe randomly a little bit more sun beat down on the paint, or the wind side. You know, if he's on a dusty farm out in Texas, the winds, if he parks the same direction all the time, it gets more of that afternoon sun, and all the big storms and dust storms that blow up kind of sandblast one side more than the other. So you just kind of... Now, I'm going to go with some medium brown. Once again, just going over everything. May not look a lot of different contrasting colors now because they're in a similar family of colors. I'm already liking it though, because I can imagine how this is going to be showing through the paint. Camera here. So you basically got your darker colors, some lighter colors, and then you top it back off with some darker colors, and it all comes together. basically anything on a reddish and reddish brown side are going to be good for rust colors. Sorry, I do know and realize that I have occasionally drifted off camera here. Someday I'll get used to making sure that I keep you in frame. All right. It's looking really good though. You can definitely see the multi layers of color here. I think the more marbled you throw into the mix, and just remember, it's not all going to show through unless you want it to. Hit the chrome a little bit more. Or the wheels. You can always start over if you think you just didn't get it right. But the cool part is you're experimenting and finding the best technique that works for you. Like, I know that my technique is not necessarily what others are doing, but I like them. This is the way it works for me. Get a little bit more red on the chrome. All right, I'll be back once I get all the colors on there and we'll show you what we ended up with. Okay, so I think I have all my underlying patina to my liking. So the next step is going to be protecting this with dull coat. It's gonna be my first time trying this particular dull coat. This is Tester's Lacquer Dull Coat. And the reason for this, I used to use the Createx water-based clear matte finish, but to bring this patina to the surface, we're going to be using a lot of water and sanding. And so if you're using water-based paint, what happens is that water reactivates everything. It's going to make a mess. It's going to make a mess of all your patina. It's going to be ugly. So my thinking is the lacquer, because I'm going to be painting my body with lacquer paint, so the top coat will be lacquer. What that's going to do is that's going to lock this stuff in, so that when I go to that sanding of the top coat down, I'm not going to hurt or lose the integrity of this. And that dull coat is going to go on the chrome, the body, the windshield. Now on the windshield, it's going to be masked off as if windshield wipers were working. And don't forget, when you're doing your patina, I went a little bit blacker on some areas because, all right, it's been maintained, meaning they've changed oil, spark plugs, and points and stuff like that, change oil regularly. But, you know, there's oil seals leaking, the rear end's leaking, transmission and engine are leaking, so there's a lot of black that blows back. So I kind of have that painted in there, and a little bit on the bottom of the interior tab because that'll show through a little bit. Firewall, same thing. You know, under the hood, and you could even go like splatters here of a higher colored rust. You know, your radiators overflowed on you a couple times, so some really light rusty color for where the radiator overflowed on you and whatnot. Okay, so the next step is going to be letting this water-based stuff cure up for several hours, and then I'll mix up the Tester's Dull Coat. It looks a little bit thick, so I'm going to thin it with my Mr. Color leveling thinner, just thin enough that it flows out of the airbrush fairly well. So I'm not sure of the ratio yet, but once I determine what that is, I'll mention it during the video. All right, so next up, the booth. Okay, so I let that dull coat cure overnight. Probably only needed a few hours being that it's a lacquer, but yeah, I let it go overnight. So once again, it looks pretty good. I mean, right now, you could build this kit, and if you want to just be sitting in a field all its life, where all the paint's been dissolved, that would be a way to go. But the main reason for that dull coat, once again, is just to waterproof this, so that we've locked in all our effects under this paint that we're going to be doing. So it won't be affected when we go into wet sanding later or whatnot. Unless you get too aggressive, you can still go through it. One other thing is I dull coated the chrome bumpers, and I ended up not being too happy with that. To me, it doesn't look right. It looks a little too just silvery now. And, everything's forgiving in the model building world. Like if you take a little bit of water and put that on there, it shines back up again. So that shows me right there that I could just go back with some nice gloss clear. And I think it's going to look a lot more realistic. As you can see here now, it has some shine. The guy doesn't polish his chrome, but chrome still shines if it hasn't been beaten away or rusted. And it's still going to be toned down quite a bit from the rest of the stuff you see on the chrome tree here. And then I'm going to just lightly sand the body. Just enough. So I'm just going to take some Trizact 5000 on a pad here and wet it down a little bit. And just like sanding and polishing on any part of the model, you don't want to dwell on any edges. Once again, when you get that water on there, you can really see the effects of the rust come through a little bit better. The dull coat's kind of subdued that a little bit. But all I'm doing here is just smoothing that texture out a little bit. So I'm going to continue wet sanding this with 5000s, and once I get the whole body sanded down a little bit, we'll be back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I kind of lightly went over everything with 5000 Trizact. I haven't rolled out a two-tone paint job yet. I'm still considering, I'm going to go white on the truck, or a little bit of an off-white, but I'm considering perhaps a beige down below. I haven't decided for sure yet, but what I'll do now is I've smoothed out where a mask line would be, because the smoother your areas where you tape, the less likely you'll get bleed through on your paint. Okay, so now that we have our patina in place, locked into place, sanded down lightly, this is one of the most important steps of the process. Is now we need to put something between this layer and our finished paint layer that is going to allow us to delaminate the paint. In other words, we don't want the paint to bond strongly. To my knowledge, there's 3 ways to do it. There may be more, and if so, comment below. Hairspray is one of them. You just spray hairspray across the top, and that's going to give you a little bit of a barrier where the paint's not going to stick as hard as it should. I tried that. I wasn't happy because I couldn't control it as well. There's also the salt technique, which I haven't done, but it looks pretty messy, where you literally wet this down a little bit and you sprinkle salt all over it, and then you spray it, so you get salt in your spray booth or whatever too, and then lately you got to go clean that up. So the method I found that I've used before is using a washable, water-soluble school glue, Elmer school glue, good old-fashioned school glue.
And I'm going to apply this just like we did the patina. So I've got a little piece of paper here and a little bit of torn off sponge, and let's get to it. So I take my sponge, make sure it's torn off so it's got some nice little rough areas here. Dip it in my glue, and now we tamping that down on paper again, just like we did our paints. And we're going to apply it to the top edges where you want the patina to show through. So I'm kind of just tapping upper edges, a little bit on the side. I don't know if you can see that, it's a little bit shiny there. And I do apologize, you know, I kind of looked back at that last camera footage and saw that once again I'm a little bit off camera here. So I'm still working on this. I'm going to give it a little bit more like in the bed here. So just randomly tapping along, make sure I hit these wheel wells. So when we sand this bed area, it's not only because of the sun beating down on it, but it's also going to reveal scratches from throwing tools and rocks and stuff into the back of the truck. Go along and give the upper bed walls, bed rails another coat. It's a fun departure, you know, from just trying to go for your best paint job in the world. It's a fun departure to occasionally build a patina car. And even the colors, you know, I mean, I'm going with an off-white and a drab beige color, a bronze. It's kind of like a beigey bronze, all subdued, weathered. Make it look real, you know. Not everything is a show car that's just glossy and beautiful. You can't go wrong. Like when you hairspray, you're getting a lot more on the paint than I am even now. Where here I'm able to control a little bit, like I can go a little bit thicker along all these edges because I definitely want that to expose after the paint, because that's most typical of where things are going to fade first. So before I go to paint, I wanted to discuss the paint that I'm going to be using and my reason for it. I'm going to go with lacquer. And first of all, the reason I'm going for lacquer is you can spray it on very thin. It doesn't break down with water because water is going to be a big part of the process to expose the underlying paint. It dries fast. Therefore, I could tape off and get my second color coat on there a lot quicker than if I use an enamel or a water-based acrylic. Now, yes, you can use a water-based acrylic, but you got to be so much more careful because the next step coming up after the paint cures is the wet sanding and toothbrush underwater to scrape off the top paint to expose the lower part. If you're using a water-based acrylic, when you're in that water with the brush and the sandpaper, it's very easy to just dissolve your paint too fast and you lose control of what you're doing. You know, I tried that once before and it was looking good. I thought I just wanted a little bit more. Next thing you know, I removed all the paint from the roof, which I didn't want to do. It just dissolved in the water. So it's a little more toxic, so you got to make sure you have good ventilation and wear a respirator, but that's my choice. Okay, so these are ready to spray right out of a bottle. So let's go to the booth. All right, so I'm using a 0.5 millimeter needle and nozzle. Paint direct out of the bottle for the lacquer, no thinning required. And I'm using 18 to 20 PSI. My technique's going to be a little bit different than normal because first we're going to just give a light mist coat everywhere to get color going, but I'm going to go very light on the top, mist coats through the entire process, and on the sides I'm going to go heavy like a normal paint job, and that's going to aid in our removing the paint later. So for the top, it's just important to have color. Okay, so that lacquer has been allowed to cure for several hours. So all I'm doing now is I'm just lightly sanding where the second color is going to go at the bottom here. So I'm just lightly scuffing and sanding that up to smooth it out a little bit, and about 1/8 of an inch up above my mask line too, just to make sure that's smooth so that my tape will stick down nice and not have any lumps or bumps where paint can get below it. Okay, so I got that bottom half all sanded off and went ahead and got all my masking done too for my two-tone. So the bottom section is going to get painted a different color. Like lacquer. Sort of a custom mix because it was a darker bronze and then I added some white to it. So, all right, we'll go to the booth. Okay, so we painted the bottom part bronze and it is unmasking time. Besides paint and decals, pulling the masking is another one of my favorites. Unless, of course, I did a bad job of masking, and then it's not so favorite. A little bit worried with that glue down that my tape would pull up the paint,
it did not. That's one of the reasons I like the frog tape. It's kind of a low tack. Okay, so not bad. Like I said, I'm not going with the bright, exciting colors there. But yeah, that looked pretty good, so I'll pull the rest of my masking and we'll be back. Okay, so all the masking pulled away nice and clean, no bleed through or anything. So it's a nice two-tone. A lot more to go on with this yet to bring out the finish on this, but we're going to let that cure overnight, and then tomorrow we get to start sanding to bring out that patina. So stay tuned. Okay, now this is going to be one of the fun parts. This is where we're going to start bringing out the patina. But before I do so, try to get up close here where you can see the really bumpy texture starting on the top and working its way gradually down. It gets smoother as you go down. But that bumpy texture is where all that Elmer's glue is. So that gives you an indicator of where your patina is going to be. And as I said when I was applying that glue, you don't have to expose all the patina, but you know, it is there if you want to. So when you start sanding this, the only tip I want to give you is it might not come off immediately, but if you get a little too aggressive, all of a sudden, boom, as soon as you hit that layer where that glue dissolves, it'll go quick, and it might go too quick if you're too aggressive. So just go at it cautiously until you get a feel for it. And same with the bed area here. It's the texture's a little rougher on top. Okay, so there's numerous ways you could do this. You can have a little tub of water. I think that I'm going to be able to actually just work right here on my mat with a little tiny trough of water, and I got a 5/1000 Trizact that I'm going to work with, which, you know, is not very aggressive, but since we've softened that barrier between the paint and the body, this should sand pretty well. So let's get started here. Let's try a little bit on the roof. I'm just going to wet that down a little bit. And just carefully start sanding back and forth. You can hear how rough. You can hear it getting slightly smoother as you go. You know, and if you need to go to a rougher grit, you can. I can see the patina is already starting to come through. So I'm going to change directions here because I want it to come through slowly so that I could decide when enough is enough. And it varies, you know. I mean, you could definitely increase that if you want to. This is why I liked using the lacquer, because one, it's waterproof, and two, it's very thin, like I said. So you get a little bit more control in this instead of it just dissolving too quick like a water base might. And you can have a paper towel standing by. There you go. So you got some patina coming through. Now I do want to get worse than that. I want it to be a little more showing, so we'll continue on here. I'm also going to make sure I sand right at the edge where I'm going to put my bare metal foil, because I do want that to be smooth. Don't want that to be too bumpy. Okay, so I'm kind of, you know, I'm not using much pressure. It's just the weight of my finger. And instead of just going at the whole roof, I'm kind of working on these outer curves.
where I think it would be exposed to the sun and fading first. Now, my other patina builds that I did, my first one was that Barn Fine Shelby, and I'll have a picture above. You know, the patina doesn't show as much with the dark color, but that's the color I wanted. I wanted that blue with white striped Shelby. Then my next one was the Galaxy, picture above, with that bronze, and that showed pretty good. But white is going to show that patina the best. So that's why I chose this. So you can see it's not coming super fast. If I wanted to get more aggressive and use a more aggressive paper, I can certainly make that go quicker. And that's also smoothing out that paint, you know, that bumpiness, so it's going to look better. But a little bumpy is going to be fine, because when a car is patinaed like this, it is not smooth. You know, it's not like a freshly waxed surface. Concentrate a little bit more on these edges. But that's why I like that glue. Now, if you had the salt, you'd be knocking the salt off and dissolving the salt to expose this. But like I said, that looks way too messy. I've never tried it, but it definitely looks messy. But, you know, it may work best for you. I think that works if you really want an aggressive looking patina. Okay, and I'm not going to stay on the roof here. I'm going to work on other parts of the body and bring them all to a certain level, and then I can always come back and give it more. But that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so next I'll work on the top of the fender here. Because that is an edge, you know, that patina pops up almost immediately, as you can see. So I'm not going to go too aggressive there, and I'll come around the side of the fender. Now, you know, again, we're activating the glue underneath first and dissolving that, which is bringing through the patina. But if you kept on sanding and sanding and sanding, you'll get to below the paint period, even below your glue. And you can if you want to. It just won't have that same effect. It'll look a little bit different. Just gotta imagine what the sun would be doing. And reference pictures always come in handy. But definitely top edges. Even more and more, because this guy always drove with his window down and his arm on the sill. So he's worn the paint off just by driving this thing, because this thing's got like 180,000 miles on it, which isn't bad for 50 plus years. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you is the wheels. I'm using Steely's here. And I treated them exactly like the cab, with the patina and the glue. And to bring that out, I just used a bristle brush and just scrubbed away at that until I got the result I wanted. I did it both wet and dry until I got it. So that looks pretty good. I don't think I want to go any more than that. All right, so I got the cab and the bed all patinaed out to my liking. Also installed all the decals. I made my own model building and retirement channel. This is the garage truck, so this is a parts runner for our little diorama. So this is what we go out and pick up our beer and parts with and stuff. I'm happy with it. I mean, you could again take it a lot deeper into patina if you want. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear coat this now because there's a contrast between the decals and the paint. Now, I don't want to use the dull coat because just because the car's faded and patinaed, it doesn't mean that there's no gloss left at all. You know, if you look at an old car that's been sitting out and not taken care of, the sides still have some gloss. So I don't want to use my 2K clear because it's way too shiny, car show shiny. And I don't want to use my dull coat lacquer. So I'm actually going to use my water-based Createx 4050 gloss. Their 4053 is a glossier product, but I don't want to go to that glossy. So 4050 is just going to give me just about the right amount of gloss. And I'm going to cut that with their 4011 reducer. And I'm going to bury the decals into that gloss. And when I spray the gloss, and I'll take it to the booth with me so you can watch. But, you know, once again, I'm going to have more gloss at the bottom edges of the truck where the sun doesn't beat down on it. And as I get up to the top patinaed side, I'm just going to pull back on my airbrush and cut down on my flow a little bit because it is okay to be totally dull up there, you know. In fact, it looks pretty favorable. So, going to get that going, and we'll be right back. Oh, one other thing is on the inner fender wells and the firewall. I was showing that earlier where I had the red oxide and patina, and I forgot that Dodges have the same color as the body for the engine compartment. So I really went dirty white here and then dirtied it up quite a bit so that you could tell that it at one time was body color. So just FYI, in case somebody was going to correct me, I corrected myself. Okay, I'm at the booth. I'm going to use my 0.5 millimeter needle and nozzle with my Createx 4050 clear. So we're going to do that. First coat's kind of a miscoat. Kind of going really light and fogging in where the decals are. A lot different than painting, you know, my normal models because I'm going for a totally different effect here. So I want dry spray and wet spray and a little bit of everything. Alright, so clear coat has dried, and it just gave it just the right kind of texture for me. A little bit shiny on the bottom where you would expect it to be, and as you get more and more to the top where all the patina is, it gets duller. We're time to do some more weathering. Now we're going to address the rust at the bottom. Okay. Now, I happen to have a couple different things here. I have Vallejo weathering, and this is a textured rust. Okay. Now you can also make your own. I've done it before, but it takes a long time. You can take like a steel wool pad, put it in a little thing of Tupperware with vinegar and seal that up, and just let that vinegar dissolve your steel wool, and over time you'll get a wash and rust texture out of it. Or to save a lot of time, you just buy it, which I did here. So this is a... Okay, so next up, I want to do a little bit of rust streaking. Very subtle though, because like I said, this thing isn't a junkyard vine. It hasn't been sitting out there unattended for years. And I've already done a little bit here. If you notice, it's just a very faint little streaks along the body there. But the way to do that is I'm using Vallejo Rust Wash. And there's other brands out there. I just happened to pick this one up when I did my first patina job, and it worked pretty good. So I just poured a little bit into a cap here. And the way I do that is I'll just take a little detail brush and let's look at this little lock right here, where the lock would be on the truck. Very faintly. You could use a toothpick too, but very faintly, just a little tiny line. Now you do have to have clear coat on here, which we already did, and you know, and you, okay, so I got those two little streaks going on, one right here by the lock mechanism and one coming off the emblem here. Now I'm going to use this little flat brush, and I poured a little bit of rubbing alcohol into a cap down here. And I'm going to gently wipe that on my forearm here, so I don't want this soaking wet, but damp. And then what you do is just lightly streak down with your brush. And if you keep streaking, you can make it almost disappear. Just depends on how much you want. I think that looks pretty good. I don't want this to be overly done, but you would do that considerably more if you really wanted a lot more rust there. But make sure that you have your clear coat on first, otherwise this is like using a panel liner. If it's too dull, it has to be either satin or gloss, semi-gloss or gloss. Flat and satin is not very good. Okay. Another fun little add-on to the patina project here is this little bed toolbox that I made. This is scratch built out of styrene, and I did the same kind of paint job. I patinaed it exactly like I did the truck, except for the top coat was steel colored, and then brought back the patina, so I wanted a little bit of a contrast from the rest of the truck. Now, the idea from this came from Ricky over at Shaggy's Anything with Wheel Scale Models YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed or seen his channel, I'll have a link in the description, but his channel card is above there on the screen. He looks just like a grown-up Shaggy too. This guy's got a great imagination. He's very crafty, so he shows a complete tutorial on how to do this bed box, and his is functional. Mine's just a static piece. His lid opens on hinges. He's got parts down below in the big tool bin, and then he's got like little sliding trays on top like a real box would be. So go check him out. His is much better than mine, but he was the inspiration. So again, a link in my description. Check out Shaggy's Anything with Wheel Scale Models. Tell him Ken sent you. Okay. Okay, so I want to just make the windshield look a little bit dusty. as if, you know, he doesn't wash his windows, but he does with his windshield washers and wipers. So what I did here is just use some blue masking tape, and I used a 4.5 centimeter or 1 3/4 inch diameter, and I just guessed. I totally improvised here, but I took this diameter and I sketched that out on a piece of masking tape here, and then an inch down, did it here, and just cut them at an angle and taped it down, and then just gently masked everywhere. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Createx matte satin finish clear, and I'm just going to spray probably just one coat just to dirty that up a little bit so you can just see that the wipers were working. So I'm going to get that sprayed and I'll be right back. Okay, so the clear coat has been dried up, and I've unmasked, and you know, that's the effect you get there, and that's kind of just what I wanted. It looks like the windshield's been a little bit dirty, and the wipers have been the only thing used to clean it up. All right, so at this point, folks, I'm gonna just assemble the entire model. I'm gonna build the whole model off camera, and then we'll be back for the final reveal. All right, we got her all assembled now. I gotta tell you, this was just a fun build. Nice departure. It's fun to do a show car, gloss finish, and all that stuff. But a patina build is just a blast, and it's much more challenging. Even though you can't go wrong, and every mistake you make is a happy mistake, it's just challenging to get it to look realistic. But it's a lot of fun. So this is probably one of my best builds yet, as far as just having a good time doing it. Kit went together real good. It's a typical MPC kit, so there's not a lot of detail. You know, and things fit together pretty well, but I did have to drill out just about every hole. You know, every place where there was a peg and a hole, I had to enlarge the holes, otherwise things didn't fit. But that's what a pin vise is for. No big deal there. Okay, so the engine compartment, you know, it's not an extremely detailed kit, but you know, it definitely looks its age, you know, for something that's been around for 50 years and lots of oil leaks going on. Never really detailed under that hood. You know, you don't do that with work trucks. Although I probably would, because I'm a little bit anal that way, but a lot of fun. Look at the interior of the truck. It was a little bit rough inside, about as worn as you see on the outside. And don't tell my wife, but I stole her favorite Navajo blanket for a seat cover. And it covers the seat just perfect. It's like the perfect size for the truck. Nah, all kidding aside, you know what that is? That is a piece of regular printer paper. And what I did is I Googled Navajo blankets, and this was a big pattern that came out. It was almost an 8x10 sheet, and I shrunk it down, and I got lucky at my first shrink. I forget what I went like 12 or 14, 20%, something like that. And I just had to trim it just a little bit with scissors. You know, and being that it's paper, it didn't conform extremely well, but I used a little bit of Mod Podge and glued it into shape. You know, first put the top on and glued it and held that, then I pushed the back in and glued it, and then the bottom. You know, but from outside the model looking in, it looks like it's a cloth seat. Originally, I was going to cut up a bandana or something, but I realized it wasn't going to be to scale. So I'm really happy with that, and I thought that was a pretty awesome idea. So that works. In fact, I'll have a picture right above here showing the paper cutout that I did, and also, you know, how it was glued to the seat there. Okay, moving on. You know, a half-ton pickup truck is all I needed for the shop. Probably the most heaviest thing I'll ever be hauling in that is going to be an engine block or a transmission or something. But, you know, it's got just enough room to carry stuff I need. You know, usually it's wheels, tires, cases of oil, things like that. Except for I got lucky on the way back from picking up the cases of oil. I saw this mini bike on the side of the road there for sale sign, so I got that thing for 75 bucks, and it runs, folks. It absolutely runs. So it's very cool. I'm very happy with the truck. It's just what we needed. Got a nice little toolbox on the back, so you know I can keep my stuff in there and locked up.
Okay, so we rolled it into the showroom. Got a few cars out of the way to do it, but I wanted you to be able to take it in on a 360 spin table here. Just soak it up, folks. Just take a good look at that. If you haven't built a patinaed car, I urge you to try it. It's just a lot of fun. It's just a departure, and everything that you do just makes it better, you know. One thing I did forget, and I'll get it up on the next clip here. We'll get it up on the lift. Take a look at the underside, because it's solid, no holes in the floor pans or anything. But you know, she's kind of rusted up down there too. We're probably gonna have to use a torch for every time we change parts on it. So we got her up on the lift, and you can kind of see she's intact down there. Not too bad. Obviously some oil leaks. Looks like there's a lot of blow by on the engine and the transmission. But you know, that's actually a good thing, because all that oil buildup kind of prevents rust from happening. So the reason the floorboards and the transmission tunnel is in good shape is it's saturated with oil. That ain't never gonna rust. And since she's up on a lift, might as well get a look at the backside too. Like I said, this is not in too bad a shape. Most of that's just surface rust, so it's a very good truck. Has brand new shocks on it. Like I said, they do maintain the truck, so a lot of fun, folks. If you haven't built one, I urge you to try. Well, that concludes this patina build, and I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I do. And if you haven't done one of these, give it a try. It is just a lot of fun. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. Just keep throwing stuff at it until you feel comfortable that you got it right. You can either make it a very mild patina or a very rough one. Mine's just a little bit over mild, I would say. So once again, I thank everybody for watching. I appreciate everybody for subscribing to the channel. And we got some fun stuff coming up here. A really big one coming up at the end of the month. And it involves taking delivery of a special car at a special museum down in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So stay tuned. That's going to be in about 3 weeks. It'll be at the end of the month or first week in August, but it's going to be quite an exciting video. And this is a real thing. We're not talking model car here. So thanks for watching, and until next week, folks, and have a happy 4th of July, and be safe out there.